Welcome to the Red Kingdom. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, 6:05 a.m. It's a Thursday morning. It's cold out there, and it's like 49 degrees. It's only going to get up to like 62 or something like that. I am ready for the warmer weather. We're going to get a nice weekend for the Memorial Day. By the way, we have a Memorial Day special edition on Memorial Day from 6 to 8. I have got my feet down on the ground and I started running. I interviewed a ton of veterans. Tears were shed. Memorial Day isn't about the barbecues, folks. It's not about the unofficial start of summer. It's not about your deals. It's about remembering those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, giving their lives up for you. Just a little tidbit what you can look forward to on Memorial Day. I talked with French McLean. He has a book out there. It's called Dying Hard. He actually gave me a copy of it. It's a great book. I've been reading it this week. It's hard to get through, but there's some moments in there, some humor. You're going to laugh. You're going to cry if you buy the book. It's on Amazon, but French McLean talked about the mattress covers in World War II. His dad was in infantry, Company B infantry. And I don't want to give it all away, but there's this one thing that stuck with me all week, and it's just really bothered me. They didn't order enough coffins in World War II, so they had to put their dead in mattress covers and bury them in mattress covers. I mean, it was just incredible. The sacrifice and what these men had to go through during wartime. So, and they died. There's men who died. And they're not just numbers. These are real people who had families, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, and they never got to come home. So that, to me, is what Memorial Day is all about. And we're going to share some of that on our Memorial Day special bright and early that Monday morning, 6 to 8 a.m. Today's show, we're going to get to J.D. Vance slamming activist judges, telling the American people, hey, you can't have what you voted for. That's what the activist judges are doing. They're saying, American people, I don't care that you voted for Donald Trump. And he says this straight to a New York Times reporter's face, which makes it all that much better. It's J.D. Vance. I mean, come on. It's so surprising. I said this yesterday. Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, RFK Jr., they have exceeded my expectations as appointees and as members of Trump's administration. They all kind of started out hating Donald Trump. RFK Jr. was a Democrat. J.D. Vance didn't like Donald Trump in 2016. Marco Rubio talked smack about Donald Trump within the first few months of 2016 of him getting elected. The guys who hated Donald Trump the most wind up being the best members of his administration. And we're going to get to a few other things this morning. There's a Democrat congresswoman. She's boasting. Congresswoman, I think she's actually state rep. Let me double check this. Yeah. So Tennessee state rep and her girl squad, the feminazis, right? They got all together in their little van with their pink seats, and then they started intimidating ICE officers and local law enforcement. And they did this in the name of protecting illegal immigrants, and they were all upset when the officers pulled them over and said, hey, what are you doing? They actually admitted on tape that they were stalking, and they were boasting about stalking these ICE agents and local law enforcement. Yeah, you're going to get pulled over if you're stalking local law enforcement. Then we're going to get to this Yosemite National Park, a cringe trans activist, multiple of them. They have a new message for you. Trans is natural. Well, that's odd because I thought that you had to get medication and medical transitions in order for you to officially become the transgender person you want to be. So it's anything but natural because you have to get medicine and you have to go through hormone replacement theory and all of the and undergo surgeries in order to be the thing that you want to be. So we're going to get to all of it. But before I get to those stories, I do have this from an Illinois congressman. He expressed disapproval on social media of this vote. So the U.S. House Agriculture Committee approved the sweeping farm bill. They pass one every single year. And this bill actually included $300 billion in cuts. Now, that's more than the previous year. cuts to food assistance programs. I don't know why the Farm Bill. Well, see, they always name these bills things that they're not actually intended to do. The Farm Bill is supposed to help farmers, but it does everything but that. It's like SNAP program. Why in the world are we putting SNAP in the Farm Bill? This is a bill that is to help our farmers and in the agriculture. Like, come on now. We put the SNAP in there so, Becky can go get her Diet Dr. Pepper on her SNAP card. So, Congressman Eric Sorensen, he asked on social media, he goes, how could anybody vote against this bill? It ensures that our veterans have something to eat. He said on X that if you're going to fight for veterans, you have to do it with more than just words. Let's take a listen to Mr. Eric Sorensen in committee here.
I didn't think that we were going to be here today. Looking at a potential cut to veteran services.
Oh.
So here we are. It's not a rule in Congress that members of Congress have to go and do anything for veterans. But there are a lot of folks that put on campaign ads that talk about how they support veterans, but do they do anything? Just recently, I stopped at the Veterans Drop-In Center on Kishwaukee Street in Rockford, Illinois. Fantastic place. It's a place of community. I got to talk to vets because it's that one place where they go and there will be a meal provided. And for many veterans who have served our country, it's the only meal that they get in that one day. I want you to think about that for a minute. Is there a Veterans Drop-In Center in your district? Have you been there? Have you talked to veterans who get one meal a day? How could anyone be against this amendment? Especially if anybody is going to run an ad to say they support our veterans. And look, let me be clear. This is exactly what this amendment says. This bill will not result in reduced participation for veterans or surviving spouses or children of service members or veterans who died during active duty or due to service-related disability. How can anyone vote against this amendment and say that you support veterans? Seriously. And if you are a veteran, even more so. Because then you're betraying the people that fought alongside of you.
All right, I'm done with that. Let's get into it. So the veterans, they deserve real support, not empty gestures. If Washington actually cared about veterans, they'd slash the bureaucratic bloat and prioritize those who served. And instead, what they're doing with this bill and this amendment was just total bogus, and it was just all fluffy language that they wanted to slide into the bill, and they voted against it because it's not doing that. The bill isn't going to slash Medicaid or welfare programs for veterans. It's not doing any of that. What it's doing is cutting that bureaucratic bloat, cutting up the fat, and they're playing budget games by putting food aid in there, billions of dollars of food aid for these SNAP programs. It really even shouldn't be in the Farm Bill, but whatever. We're cutting it because you're lining a lot of these nonprofit organizations' pockets, and you're also lining, they've got $27 billion, I think, to corporate agriculture business subsidies. And I mean, you're lining big ag pockets here with this Farm Bill. It's disgraceful. You're not helping veterans. So the way State Representative David Freese said, he told me that, hey, most of our federal funding should be going to veterans' health services, mental health services. Not that vets don't go to the facility that Eric Sorensen had brought up, but he says, I really think it's a distraction from what we really need. They're homeless for a reason. They're going to these food or utilizing these food programs for a reason. They've got PTSD. They've been engaged in things and seen very traumatic things. And we need to focus on mental health for these veterans rather than billions to this food program. Just because you cut this program, by the way, doesn't mean that it's going to negatively impact veterans within that program. Most likely what's going to wind up happening, Susan, who collects a $100,000 salary to administer said program, she's no longer going to get the $100,000 plus $300,000 plus. I don't know. No, I'd have to look into the specifics of this nonprofit, but this is how they're all run. They've got bloated salaries, and the veterans aren't going to be negatively impacted by this. If they're the ones seeking assistance through this program, really the people who are going to be negatively impacted, Big Ag, because this bill also seeks to redirect some of these subsidies to this corporate agribusiness, and we want to get this subsidies to actual farmers, those farmers who, were not these, facilities that wind up exploding because they don't care about their employees. We don't want the subsidies to go to those guys. We want them in the pockets of your neighbors who are feeding you and who are actually doing the work. Okay, that's the tax credits and the subsidies and things like that to actual farmers, not these big corporate agribusinesses, and not food aid, because guess what? It's a farm bill. All right, shift gears. You're listening to Conservative Cats at East 92.1. Let's get to JD Vance here. Activist judges who they're now deciding who you can and cannot deport, despite that never being their job description. They weren't elected to determine that. The current United States president, though, Donald Trump, was elected to determine who you can and can't deport. He was elected to do that. He was mandated by the American people to do that. And we keep electing immigration enforcement, but the courts keep telling the American people, no, you're not allowed to have what you voted for. JD Vance, he discussed this conflict about the American people not being able to have their vote come to fruition. He discussed this with a New York Times reporter. And he said many of these judges have self-appointed themselves as immigration authority in this country, and they weren't elected to do that. So let's take a listen to JD Vance. Here we go. This is complete masterclass, as always.
You cannot have a country where the American people keep on electing immigration enforcement and the courts tell the American people they're not allowed to have what they voted for. And that's where we are right now. We're going to keep working it through the immigration court process, through the Supreme Court as much as possible. And look, success to me is not so much a number, though obviously I'd love to see the gross majority of the illegal immigrants who came in under Biden deported. That actually is a secondary metric of success. Success to me is that we have established a set of rules and principles that the courts are comfortable with and that we have the infrastructure to do that allows us to deport large numbers of illegal aliens when large numbers of illegal aliens come into the country. That to me is real success.
Okay. JD Vance, truer words have never been spoken. What's the point of elections if judges can just come in and override the will of the people? That's something that the left is never going to be able to explain. They could care less. They're going to do everything in their power to make sure no human is illegal. No, humans can do illegal things. They do it all the time. They murder people. They hurt people. They enter the country illegally. According to CNN, Vice President JD Vance called Chief Justice John Roberts' comments earlier this month that the judiciary role is to check the executive branch a, quote, profoundly wrong sentiment. I love JD Vance. And he said that the court should be respectful to the president, particularly when it comes to immigration. Yes. Just because, and I think that we were kind of taught this when we were growing up in public school, that the judicial branch and the Supreme Court is just so important and it's the most important branch. No, they're all equal branches of government. He goes, quote, I thought it was a profoundly wrong sentiment that one half of his job and the other half of his job is that's one half of his job to check the executive branch. But the other half of his job here is to make sure he understands his role and within his own branch. That's the other half of his job. And you can't have a country where the American people keep electing immigration enforcement and then the courts tell the American people, no, you're not allowed to have what you voted for. And this is what J.D. Vance said on a podcast with the New York Times. And all these people, all these kinds of judges are barring the federal government. All these judges are barring the federal government from deporting MS-13 gang members, terrorists, sex predators, murderers. I mean, that's the types of people that these judges want in our country. I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. JD 2028. And like I said yesterday, if you didn't catch the show, it's archived for you on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Sorensen. Okay, that's an inside joke, folks. I'm just not comfortable talking about the inside joke, so we're gonna keep that between me and the listener, David Paul Blumenshine. Catch the DPB show. His show is really good. He's on Rumble. I just type it in your search bar at the DPB show. He's hilarious conservative powerhouse in Illinois. JD Vance 2028. Yes, as I said yesterday, and like I said, the show is archived for you. Marco Rubio, JD Vance, RFK Jr., all of these people, and I don't know what it is. I think that, and Pete Hegseth, there's certain people in this administration that I'm disappointed with. We are going to get to eventually this Tennessee state representative. She posted a video bragging about how she was trolling and stalking, really. She was boasting about this ICE troopers. And she was in this car with her friend, her gal pal, right? And they had the pink seats. Oh, gosh, I hate feminists. I really can't stand them. Feminism has completely destroyed our country. And, it's interesting. I've been reading this week, the women's suffrage movement, women's right to vote. And I'm not necessarily against it, but it's incredible the people who were anti-women, so like the women who were anti-women obtaining the right to vote, their warnings read like prophecies. They said, like, hey, fast forward to 2025, right? I mean, they didn't come out and say this exactly, but you read the primary documentation, they say, they're going to do everything they can to keep women out of the home. They're going to do everything they can to keep women from having children. And they're going to tax us. This is going to be an excuse to tax us more into oblivion. And it's a way to collect more taxes because you're over doubling the workforce. I mean, it's incredible what those anti-women suffrage movement people had said, because it reads like prophecy, like they predicted the future, and here we are in 2025, and everything that they said was going to happen happened. And they actually had this amazing argument that women, if they weren't afforded the right to vote, or if they weren't, given this right to vote, and there was an amendment made, if they hadn't done that, they would have more power. So it was really interesting, the tie-breaking vote there with the amendment. The reason why he voted the way he did, and I think it's interesting, and they point this out. How did the women get that passed? Women had insane amounts of influence, and control in the political space, despite not being the ones voting on the floor, debating, things like that. That was all left up to the men. We had an incredible amount of influence, and I'd argue even more influence without the right to vote. And here's why. The tie-breaking vote came down to a guy, and he voted because his mom told him to vote a certain way. Women, they had way more influence. Now you get these women like the Cherokee what's her name, Elizabeth Warren, and you get this fool here, Tennessee representative, the state representative, who's trolling these ICE officers in her little gal pal car with their pink seats. Nobody takes you seriously anymore because you've made a mockery of the system and the whole reason why, and this is why women weren't able to vote. It's because we did have a patriarchy. We don't have a patriarchy anymore. It doesn't exist because there's probably more women in legislative power than there are men. I know that's the case for Illinois. At least it seems to be that way. But the patriarchy was by design in that men were good at doling out resources. It's all about resources war, and that's what government is. It's all about controlling the resources, and men were just better at that and have been historically and are better at that. I'm just going to be honest with you. And women had such a more powerful influence, though, than I think that they realized they had. They felt like they needed the right to vote in order to have this influence. They were the quiet influencers, which is what is so much more powerful than being these loud, obnoxious feminists in, the Tennessee State House. For example, this representative, you had so much more power and you beat it all away by obtaining this right to vote or pushing for it this hard, because you've lost your respect and you lost your bargaining chip. Actually, I'm reminded of the biblical queen. I'll have to share that with you. I got to come back for the radio. But stick around about 10 minutes in the stream. We're going to go through this biblical character I did a deep dive on, and she was masterclass at the power of quiet influence. And she and her husband, the king at the time, she ultimately became queen. But she had such a powerful influence, being the quiet, behind the scenes person. And I think there's tons of power, in that. So let's get back to the show. I want to get back to JD Vance here, and then I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit about that Tennessee state rep who was trolling ICE officers. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, 628 a.m. You guys can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. JD Vance, he said that he believes the administration has an obligation to treat people humanely. He also said that it's an open question as to how much due process is due to illegal immigrants. And, these activist judges, they are going to bat for some of the worst people on the planet. We're talking terrorists. We're talking people who rape mentally handicapped individuals. And I'm going to share this with you, and it's going to be tough to hear, but we got to have the tough conversations because this is true. Let's take a listen to this. These are the people, just remember, these are the people that the activist judges are going to bat for. Take a listen.
So these individuals that are up here today, these represent the true national security threats and public safety threats that ICE officers and agents nationwide go after. I just want to go over a few of the highlighted cases that you all have in front of you. So for instance, we have an individual that's convicted of homicide and armed robbery and served 15 years in confinement. Due to countries that won't take their citizens back, this individual was released back into the community under ICE supervision to prey upon people again. Another individual sentenced to life in confinement, convicted of first-degree murder. His country would not take him back, forcing ICE to have to re-release him back into the community to re-offend. As Tricia highlighted before, we have an individual that raped and sexually assaulted a mentally handicapped victim. Because his country would not take him back, ICE had to find a third country to take him back so we can remove this public safety threat. As a career law enforcement officer and a career officer with ICE, I've been dealing with these recalcitrant countries for years, having to see repeated murderers, sex offenders, violent criminals re-released back into the United States because their home countries would not take them back. Yet under President Trump and under the leadership of Secretary Noem, we are now able to remove these public safety threats so they won't pry on the community anymore, and they won't have any more victims in the United States.
There you have it. These are real people, and that's who the judges want to stay in our country. All right, I gotta take a quick break. But when we come back, a Democrat Tennessee state representative posted a video bragging about how she followed ICE troopers in her car with her pink seats, with her gal pal, you know, the feminazis, and they were running around making a video trying to get some clicks. And they were shocking ICE troopers. I'm going to get to that story. Plus, you won't want to miss it. A little bit later, we're going to be talking about these cringy trans activists. They put up this trans flag at Yosemite National Park, and they have a new message for you. Being trans is natural. Well, that's kind of odd because you have to medically transition and undergo surgery and take hormone replacement therapy in order to do transition, so it's not natural. I'll be right back. Please do like and share. I appreciate it. Like and share the video. So before I jumped back to JD Vance, I was talking a little bit about women and the right to vote and the suffrage movement, and how I think that it was dumb because women actually had way more influence prior to the actual right to vote and prior to this amendment. And sorry, my throat is like really scratchy this morning. If you guys live in Illinois, like we had 90-degree weather, now we have like 40-degree weather, and it's just not doing wonders for my throat, I'm going to be honest. So before, I was telling you about this biblical queen. Her name is Esther. She's a young Jewish woman. She was orphaned, raised by her cousin, and she ultimately became the queen of Persia. But Esther does this really cool thing, and Haman, who is the right hand man to the king. Okay, so he's not actually elected king. He's the right hand man, and this goes to show you that whole quiet power thing. If you have quiet power and you're not really the face and you're not really out there, you've got so much more leverage. One thing that Michael Madigan, we know that's really here in the state of Illinois, one thing that he was not an out there person. I mean, it's believed that he didn't even have a cell phone. He didn't really put himself out there. Michael Madigan was not the type of guy to be screaming for clicks on X, okay? And he actually had tons of influence and was a master at corruption. And I'm not saying that, women should be corrupt, but they were, prior to the women's suffrage movement, far more influential, far more. And I always pose this question: how do you think the women actually got that amendment passed without having any election or electing power, no representation in Congress? How do you think they got it passed? It's because women had so much more power and influence back then. Nobody takes it seriously anymore because we screamed and cry at the sky, and we ride around in our cars with our pink seats and troll ICE troopers now when we're elected officials, state representatives, because we're trying to get clicks and attention. But anyway, women, but Haman, he was the right-hand man to the guy, the king. And Esther ultimately married the king. She was chosen for her beauty, but her Jewish identity was withheld upon her cousin's advice. She was raised by her cousin. She was an orphan. Okay. Queen Vashti was banished because she refused to appear at a king's banquet. Okay. Now get this. Esther, she had incredible courage. So Haman, he was right-hand man to King Xerxes, I think yeah, Xerxes is how you pronounced it. King Xerxes, that's her husband. Now, Mordecai overheard this plan to assassinate the king and reported it to Esther. The conspirators were executed, and Mordecai's loyalty is recorded, okay, by the way, in the Royal Chronicles. This is an incredible story. If you guys haven't read it, go read it. But she concealed her Jewish identity. Haman was anti-Jew. So anti-Semitism has been around for ever. Okay, what time period is this? before Christ, 5th century before BC. So 5th century BC. So Mordecai, he informed Esther of this, and Mordecai was enshrined into the record as loyal because he informed Esther, because Esther had gotten it pushed through to where, hey, there's this assassination plot. They informed the king, and the king wasn't ultimately assassinated. But this is really interesting because Haman, he had planned to exterminate all of the Jews in this empire. That was his plan. And he convinced the king to issue a decree. Okay, so convinced the king. He wasn't the face, he wasn't the king, he was the right-hand man. He's kind of like a Tony Fauci, a bureaucrat. And he convinced the king to issue this decree to exterminate all the Jews. Mordecai urges Esther to go to the king and plead for her people, saying very famously in the Bible, who knows but that you have come to your loyal position or your royal position for such a time as this, for such a time as this. So she risks her own life by approaching the king, because in those times she couldn't approach the king without being summoned. And she invites him to 2 banquets. So look at Queen Vashti. Queen Vashti, she refused to appear to the king's banquet, and she, gets dropped, and they launched a new search for, dropped means, divorced essentially, or like, hey, you're no longer the queen anymore. I'm looking for a new woman. That's what King Xerxes did. She hosts a banquet, 2 banquets, multiple banquets, wines and dines her husband, and talks to him quietly and brings her request respectfully to the man. Okay. And Queen Vashti, she was dismissed. I think that this is a beautiful tale of feminism versus, what women should actually be like, and how you can use your power and influence in a respectful way. She revealed her Jewish identity, exposed Haman's plot, and the king was furious and ordered Haman to be hung at the gallows. And it was gallows. He actually, the gallows. So this is a huge victory for women. Esther, look up the story. I think it's actually an amazing story. All right, let's get back to the program. Bum, bum, bum. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. It's 6:37 a.m. As always, I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. You guys can subscribe, share. And there I provide you resources. I do that for you, so that way I'm not lying to you. You can trust the reporting here on Cities 92.9. And I want to get to this story. This is a Democrat Tennessee state representative who posted a video bragging that she was following around these ICE agents and these troopers in her car to harass them. I think it's hilarious that she's got pink seats in her car here. And it's unclear if she thought that this video was going to be like make her look morally superior. I don't know what the intention really was with this video. Maybe she was trying to get clicks. I don't know. Maybe she was drunk. I don't know. But she's with her gal pal, and they decided to, stalk law enforcement, which is just wild to me. Total bogus. So her name is Afton Bain. She's a Democrat, Tennessee state representative. Take a listen to this. Here we go. She's with her gal pal. They get pulled over for stalking. I mean, they say that they ran a red light, but they get pulled over really for stalking. By their own admission, these ICE troopers, take a listen.
Okay, this is great. We've got our girl squad and we're bullying the ICE vehicles and state troopers. So this is a win. Your favorite blonde state rep. Her phone's always at 1%. I think my superlative is most likely to always have her phone at 1%. So,
Did you text that?
No, I'm still here. Okay, so we're waiting for my phone to charge. Let me send this to Emily and the girl. There we go. Okay. Did he let them go? Oh, people.
Us?
Yeah, they think we were arrested.
Yeah.
My life cut out. Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
because your girl can't keep her phone charged. So they're probably running our information. Nikki, tell us what's transpired tonight.
So we found the ICE and the THP people. I did not put makeup on because this was not
Okay,
planned.
then I'll put it back.
No, I
Oh,
mean,
you're
it's
good?
fine.
Okay,
It's,
okay.
We've already seen it.
Okay.
We found the ice and the THP people, and then we followed them to the gas station, and I took their spot at the gas station. So I think that made them a little upset. And then I tried to go in the gas station, go to the bathroom, but the gas station people would not let me go, even though I told them I really had to. And then when I got out, they were leaving, so I left too. And then they pulled into another parking lot. And when I pulled into the other parking lot behind them, then they flicked their lights to pull us over and accused me of running a red light.
So there we are.
So here we are.
Tomato.
Help.
Okay,
Why?
why do you think that they came up to my side? The state trooper came up to my side of the window and not Nikki's window. Why do you think that happened?
Also, she did not have to give her ID. Am I correct? I know I'm correct because I asked this earlier.
So one, why do you think that the state trooper came up to my window, not Nikki's? And then did he ask for my ID and Nikki said that wasn't?
And he said it's a lawful order.
It's a
but
lawful
it's
order.
Not.
Wow. So how many times did she say, my phone's dead, my phone's dead, my phone's dead, my phone's dead? The most unlikable person, I think, on the planet. Nevertheless, this speaks volumes as to how entitled the left is. They are so emboldened. I don't know why left-leaning elected officials feel like they can do whatever the heck they want, like stalk law enforcement and get away with it. It's becoming far too common. These people act like children. They're harassing federal troopers. They probably didn't let her into the gas station. She disclosed that she was going to go into the gas station to follow these ICE troopers, most likely. I mean, these ICE troopers aren't stupid. They're law enforcement, okay? They know that they're following them. They blatantly admitted that they were bullying and following these ICE troopers around, and the ICE troopers probably directed the gas station attendants, hey, do not let these women in while we're here in the gas station. They're stalking us, right? So they denied them. They listened to law enforcement. They denied them entry into this gas station from what it appears of their own admission. And look, that's not how this current administration works, okay? You're not going to get away with bullying and harassing ICE agents. You're not going to get away with it. And they may or may not have learned the hard way. I don't know if they were fined, if they were, they better be charged with harassment or stalking. But, this didn't turn out so well for the last elected official who pulled something like this off, like a similar stunt. It didn't end too well. I mean, I wish more would have been done. I don't think he was ultimately charged, but there was this mayor, Mayor Baraka. Okay, so Mayor Baraka, he was charged with misdemeanor trespass because he, so I'm going to read from Alina Habba, the official statement from the U.S. Attorney, Alina Habba. She says, I take my obligation as U.S. Attorney seriously, understand the responsibility that comes with my position, and I will work diligently to uphold the law and deliver justice for the people of New Jersey. So after extensive consideration, we've dismissed Mayor Barca's misdemeanor charge of trespass for the sake of moving forward. In the spirit of public interest, I've invited the mayor to tour Delaney Hall. This is a ICE facility that he trespassed, and he barged in with multiple members of Congress as well earlier this month. The government has nothing to hide at this facility. I will personally accompany the mayor so he can see firsthand. They're accusing ICE agents of locking people up in this Delaney Hall and not providing, food, water, clothing, place to stay while they're awaiting deportation. The citizens of New Jersey deserve unified leadership so we can get to work and keep our state safe. This dismissal against the mayor is not the end of this matter. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. Congressional oversight is an important constitutional function that I fully support. However, that is not at issue in this case with the misdemeanor charge of the mayor. Representative LaMonica McIver assaulted, impeded, and interfered with law enforcement That conduct must not be overlooked by the chief federal law enforcement official in the state of New Jersey, and it is my constitutional obligation to ensure that our federal law enforcement is to be protected when executing their duties. So you had Congress members, mayors, you had people charging this facility trespassing. I think that he should have been charged, this mayor, Barkas, but there was an olive branch extended to this guy. She says, quote, I've persistently made efforts to address these issues without bringing criminal charges and have given Representative McIver every opportunity to come to a resolution, but she has unfortunately declined. No one is above the law, politicians or otherwise. It is the job of this office to uphold justice regardless of who you are. So you've got people beating up, assaulting. I mean, I watched the video. It was earlier this month. You had a ton of, Congress people and mayors charging this Delaney Hall facility, this ICE facility. You need to be held, and I disagree with the dropping of the misdemeanor charge, but that was an olive branch that Alina Habba, the U.S. attorney, had extended. And I get it. But like, no one is above the law. These are total buffoons. And the people who were involved in this, they need to be expelled immediately from Congress, because I watched the video. I mean, no punches were really thrown, but there was definitely shoving of Federal Immigration Authority officers, ICE officers. And we can't have that. So the mayor of Newark, he was arrested for trespassing. Good on Alina for arresting him, but I don't disagree with the whole dropping of that misdemeanor charge. And he was arrested for trespassing in that ICE facility. They were barging through, total buffoons. Speaking of buffoons, I'm going to take a quick break, but we're going to come back. Transgenderism, I guess, is natural now. They want to label it as natural, although that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because you have to medically transition in order to become the sex that you are. It doesn't make any sense to call this natural. It's everything but natural. You have to take synthetic hormones. So yeah, it's not natural. You don't just wake up one morning and, oh, I'm a girl. Transgender people even recognize that gender dysphoria isn't a natural thing, because they actually take hormone replacements and they do everything they can to present as a female or male, whatever the case, female to male, male to female. So yeah, it's not natural. That's why transgender individuals take synthetic hormones in order to, artificially make themselves an opposite sex. All right, I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Buffoons. Yeah, wasn't that weird? Hold on. The eyebrow pulling. Like, she was going like this the whole time. It almost like made me think she was on something. I'm not gonna lie. When they were pulled over and they're like bullying and following around these ICE troopers, it's something that like teenagers would do, and they were like drunk teenagers would do. I'm not lying. So the whole reason why I really wanted to bring that up was, we've come a long way from having power and influence and women actually making a difference to that. I don't know what that is, where you're driving around in a car with pink seats and the gal squad is bullying law enforcement. Like, you're doing nothing, and you've got no influence. And I really wish, and I encourage you, I'll actually provide it for you in the comment section here. I'll pull it up. But I encourage you to go read some of the primary documents from the women's suffrage movement, and how those women had said things like these things were going to happen, where women aren't taken seriously, and we lose a lot of our influences because of the amendment passing. So we're going to get to that, or I'm going to find that for you, but a little bit later we are going to get to this trans activist who decided to deliver a message to the MAGA-ites, or really the unwoke masses, the people who are sane, I should say. He wanted to deliver a message to you, the sane person. Being trans is natural. Well, that's odd. Last I checked, he had to take synthetic hormones. It's not natural at all, and to take like hormones in order to do it. So we're going to play this here. Hold on. Hoping I can get this pulled up. There we go. Okay, just take a look at this. I know what you're thinking. I thought it too. This he, she, they thing, like whatever he's presenting as, I think that a biological male presenting as a female. Look at this short skirt. And this is what's so offensive about this. He says that he's trans and he wants to be a female. It's so offensive to women because you're really chalking up femininity to these are misogynistic weirdos, and they've exaggerated feminine traits and the superficial makeup, right? And they've reduced womanhood to this superficial, exaggerated caricature, like almost like a Bratz doll, right? I mean, these are misogynistic weirdos who want to be women, and they don't really understand womanhood, and they will dress up like this. Or I can spot a transvestite from a mile away, and here's why. They don't follow fashion, female fashion, very closely, and they don't present as they either dress in very, very young looking clothes like a toddler would dress in, like trying to think of some example, but like a little like dress that like looks like a toddler, and they'd wear pigtails and ribbons in their hair, which if you go out on the street, what woman dresses like that in 2025? No one is the answer. And or they'll dress in like these granny like looking sweaters, and I don't know what it is. I think they're mimicking their little sisters or their mothers. It's really weird and bizarre. But they really have no idea what womanhood is about, and they just try to mimic all of the superficial features, and then they go to the extent of maybe even exaggerating those features, like this fellow here with the bright blush and the makeup. Yeah, it's sad, and it's really kind of demeaning. You're in clown makeup and a really short skirt. That doesn't make you a woman. I'm sorry. All right. Yeah, he's got thighs for days. They are like, at least he's in the gym. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. It's 6:53 a.m. on Cities 92.9. I appreciate you being here. I really do. I love interacting with you. You can always text me 309-451-9299. That's our text line. Trans activist, he wants to deliver you a message. Total buffoons, these people. I don't know. Transgenderism, it's not natural, and this is what they're trying to shove down your throat. They're labeling it as natural, which makes no sense, because why would you need to medically transition and take synthetic hormones if it was so natural? The left woke up one day. They decided that gender and sex are distinct and different, despite logic holding up. Logic not holding up. We now have a mental health crisis in this country, and it's transgenderism. That is a mental health crisis. Really, what I think it is, a lot of the transgender community are misogynistic men who mimic what they think women look like. That's really what I think that a majority of the transgender community is. It's just misogynistic men pretending to be women because mommy hurt them, or they dress up as children. I can spot out a transgender individual like right away because they don't keep up with normal female fashion. They exaggerate. So this guy, he's dressed in a short skirt, and he's got Bratz doll makeup, and they exaggerate these superficial features of women, or they dress as like really young looking children, like little girls, or they dress as like grannies. I don't know why that is, but like it's really weird. And I know what you're going to think when I play this. You're like, oh, there's no way this is real. This person is trolling. That's not the case. This individual is actually transgender and actually hung up this flag, this transgender flag at Yosemite National Park. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Some carry hate. We carry the largest trans pride flag to ever be flown in a national park and unfurled it on the side of El Cap to prove a point that trans is natural. The Trump administration and transphobes would love to have you believe that being trans is unnatural, but species that can transition sexes can be found on every continent and in every ocean on planet Earth. So call it a protest, call it a celebration. We are bringing elevation to liberation. They try to erase us from government websites and education systems and libraries. So we raise this flag higher than ever before so every trans person knows that they have people that love them in their corner. The people united will never be defeated.
Oh boy. Trans is natural, according to NBC, which describes it. They describe this as Trans is Natural is an actual coalition. So they've got a group name, and it's called Trans is Natural, and they describe themselves as a coalition of transgender, queer, and ally climbers. So they climb mountains, I guess. And they said in a statement that spreading this flag across Yosemite National Park between these two rocks, I'll get to it here in a second. It's like granite monoliths. It's called heart edges or heart ledges. It's 55 feet high, or it's a 55 feet flag, 55 by 35 feet flag, largest flag display ever on this El Capitan. I think I'm saying that right. It's in Yosemite National Park, but according to NBC, this is an act of solidarity and resistance, the spreading of this flag. Okay, it should be a crime to look like this fella. He's got a short skirt on, and he's got Bratz doll makeup on. I mean, this is just bizarre. It should be a crime to look like that. I mean, I guess we live in a free country, so boo-hoo for me. But I mean, do whatever you want. I just don't want to hear about it. You think that the Donald Trump's administration is going to care that you hung up this flag at Yosemite National Park? Like, gosh, it's just so bizarre. So, if his being a woman, and this is what really stood out to me, means wearing a ridiculously short skirt and clown makeup, then this is enough proof that we need to know that these people are just misogynists who have dedicated reducing their identity and they have dedicated their lives to reducing womanhood to just simply makeup and short skirts and all of these superficial exaggerated traits, and they think that women are Bratz dolls and they dress up like Bratz dolls. And this is a scandal in itself. This should show you what the transgender community is all about. I got to take a quick break. We're going to wrap this story up and then I'll be back. I've got more news ahead. Listening Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Let me get the holy oil. Smash that like button. Hey, if you're watching, smash that like button. I'm going to take a quick break, but we're going to come back. We're going to wrap this story up, and I've got more stories ahead. Subscribe to the channel today. Welcome to the Red Kingdom, conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington normal. Did want to get to a few national stories today. Donald Trump meeting with the South African president. This is a big deal here. A huge deal. I do want to get to that story, but I'll wrap up the trans activists putting up these flags, or this big flag. It's like a 55-foot by 35-foot flag. It's the largest flag display ever in Yosemite National Park's Capitan. El Capitan. That's the name of this, and it's called Heart Ledges. It's like a big mountain almost looking, and they put this flag up. Park officials actually directed that they bring the flag down, that they take the flag down, but they were told to bring this down, and the climbers said, well, we didn't break any park rules. Here's the statement, what they said. The group, it's called Trans is Natural. It's a coalition of transgender people and ally climbers. It's like transgender people who climb mountains, I guess. I don't know. So we flew the trans pride flag in Yosemite to make a statement. Trans people are natural and trans people are loved, says the drag performer and environmentalist Patty Gania. He dresses as like a female, short skirt, Brad Stall makeup. Yeah, he says, let this flag fly higher than hate. We are done being polite about trans people's existence. We call it a protest, call it a celebration. Either way, we're giving elevation to liberation. What exactly are they being liberated from? It's not like we take transgender people and lock them down and cuff them for being trans. It's not happening. Trans genocide not happening. Look at the numbers. The amount of people who are trans who die is very, very, very minimal. And a lot of the times, if they die by, it's mainly suicide. Homicide of the transgender community is like very very small, very small. And a lot of the homicides stem from things like prostitution, drug trafficking, or drug deals gone bad. Like that's where all the homicides of the transgender people come from. So there's not like transgender people aren't gunning down transgender people. Okay, and you're trying to convince us that trans is natural, but we all know that it's not. In fact, by very definition, you have to medically transition with synthetic hormones and undergo surgery. So it's anything but natural. However, while it may or may not be the case that people love them, you cannot change the fact that this is nothing to do with natural biology. It's got nothing to do with that. Okay, so when he says in this statement that trans people are natural and trans people are loved, I don't know if this guy is loved. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know, but I do know that trans people are not natural in the sense that it's not biological, and quite literally you have to take synthetic hormones in order to be trans. So this message at Yosemite National Park, I don't think it's going to get to the Trump administration, and I don't know why they thought that flying this flag at Yosemite National Park is going to convince anybody to affirm their delusion. I doubt that it did that. Most people who understand that this is a delusion and a mental illness, they weren't convinced by the flag being flown at Yosemite. So you gotta do better than that, guy. I do want to get to this national news. Trump yesterday was talking with the South African president, and he's holding the South African president accountable. So here's President Donald Trump literally saying, turn down the lights. He wants the lights dimmed, and then he proceeds to play these videos with the South African president where the South African political leaders are calling for the death of white South Africaners. And afterwards, he showed the president this video of crosses. Okay, so we're going to see the video, right, of Donald Trump plays it for him, and then he shows him a subsequent video of all the crosses, and each one symbolizes a white Southern African white farmer murdered in South Africa simply because of their race. God bless Donald Trump. He is, of course, the the actual leader of the free world and the cojones it takes to sit somebody down and force them to be accountable for what's going on in their country is incredible. Here we go.
Turn the lights down. Turn the lights down and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
So he plays this video of all the South African leaders, these political leaders, calling for the deaths of these white South African farmers. So it goes on, and then Donald Trump comes back and shows him, the South African president, the white crosses. So translation here, we're going to shoot them, they're going to run, and they're talking about the white Southern African farmer. And you won't even look at it. You won't even look at the video. I mean, you can kind of see him like glance at it a little bit, but you won't even look. Here's Donald Trump. Here we go.
These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross, and there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. And those cars aren't driving, they're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who was killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it.
So he actually holds the South African president responsible or accountable, and he sits him down right there in front of the American media and forces him to watch what's going on in his own country. All right, let's get into the 7 o'clock hour. What I had planned: Donald Trump defending Joe Biden against the people who controlled Joe Biden in the White House. He says that they were really the ones destroying America, and don't blame Joe, because it's the people who were controlling Joe Biden. Those are the people you should blame. So he's actually defending Joe Biden, Donald Trump. And then we're going to get to Bernie Sanders. He admits out loud what we all know: the Democrats, they lie about their opponents and they call them racist and sexist. Bernie Sanders, he's going on podcasts and he's starting to sound kind of like MAGA. It's insane. So the man, we're going to get to Bernie Sanders, but there's also this man that I want to get to. I had pulled it earlier this week, but this is an insane story. He strangled a coyote for 10 minutes to save his life. So this is just one of those weird ones that I think you're going to get a kick out of. But let's get to Joe Biden. Don't blame Joe. We all feel bad. We're praying for him. Okay, the prostate cancer, it's aggressive. I hope that he was getting the treatment that he needed. I don't know. Jill's a doctor, so I'd imagine I'd imagine he got proper treatment because, she's a doctor. But Lepron, right? This is what's used to treat prostate cancer. From what I understand, it gives you memory loss, diarrhea, all kinds of craziness. So that's probably why we saw him propped up, manipulated. It's because he was on Lepron, and the side effects quite literally make you into a potato. You can't stay awake. So don't blame Joe Biden. Blame the people who manipulated him, made all the decisions, and they were the ones behind destroying America during that time period, 2021 to 2025. Joe Biden. This is what Donald Trump put out there on Truth Social. Take a listen. Joe Biden was not for open borders. He never talked. Nope, never talked about open borders where criminals of all kinds, shapes, and sizes can flow into the country at will. It wasn't his idea to open the border. and almost destroy our country. It cost us hundreds of billions of dollars to get criminals out of our country and go through a process where we're going through now. It was the people who knew he was cognitively impaired and that took over the auto pen. He goes on, he says, they stole the presidency of the United States and they put us in great danger. This is treason at the highest level. Yeah. They did it to destroy our country. The Joe Biden that everybody knew would never allow drug dealers, gang members, and the mentally insane to come into our country unchecked and unvetted. All anyone had to do was look up his record. Something very severe should happen to the treasonous thugs that wanted to destroy our country, but couldn't, because I came along, make America great again. His Truth Social, exactly. And that's what's everybody is going to be reporting on Joe Biden and prostate cancer, and nobody's going to really talk about what this meant. And it's treason, what was done. It's treason. Did you properly inform the American people of Joe Biden not being well and not being capable of running the country? You didn't. You knew probably going in that he wasn't well. You hid it from the American people. Then you lied about it to the American people. And that's treasonous. And we elected Joe Biden. We didn't elect whoever. We don't even know who it was running the country during that time. So don't blame Joe. Blame the people responsible of taking advantage of Joe, especially. There's a book out there now exposing this. Leftists are writing this now. I find it so interesting. You know, I talked about this 3 years ago on the air, and conspiracy cat, KKK cat, how could you? Joe Biden just has a stutter. And now leftists are coming out with books that say, hey, this is pretty deep. Here's Jake Tapper, not a conservative, talking about how the drug addict, Hunter Biden, was actually running the show there. Let's share this. He was on some sort of podcast. He was talking about his book. Here we go.
Factor was the Hunter stuff.
I think it was considerable. I think Hunter was driving the decision making for the family in a way that people. He was almost like a chief of staff of the family.
Does that strike you as pretty bizarre?
It's bizarre because I think he is provably, demonstrably unethical, sleazy, and prone to horrible decisions. I mean,
tell me how you really feel.
Well, I mean, I just look at the record. I mean, after his brother died, he cheated on his wife with his brother's widow, and then got her addicted to crack. That's just one thing I could say. I mean, I don't have a lot of personal regard for him, and just based on having nothing to do with, I barely have ever met him. I've met him like once or twice, but I knew Bo. Bo was a great, upstanding guy.
I knew him too. Really,
a real loss for the country too, not just for his family, for the country. But Hunter is not that, and the idea of letting him drive the family car, as it were, is just really, really questionable.
That's Jake Tapper. All right, I'm old enough to remember he was the one that was saying, oh, it's Joe Biden. He's got a stutter. Stop making fun of a guy's stutter, will ya? So now he's got this book. It's called The Original Sin. And the media, they're going to attack Donald Trump for this. His Truth Social, they're going to say that it's a conspiracy for MAGA to claim that they hid Joe Biden's cancer from the American people. Fast forward, we're going to have Jake Tapper admitting in another book. And then maybe finally they'll believe it that they covered up Joe Biden's cancer. Actually, the Biden family, not a lot of people know this, they have a history of hiding cancer from the American people. And I'll tell you more about that here coming up in just a little bit. Smash that like button on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Join me on the other side at Cities 92.9. Hey, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Hit it. hit the like button. We are going to be talking about Jake Tapper's Original Sin, this book, and it just bothers me so much. Like, we all said that Hunter Biden was a crack addict. We all said that he was a garbage human being, and Jake Tapper in his book, he says that the drug addict actually was running things at the White House, and yeah, this is how deep it went. The people who ran Joe Biden, it was his family members, Jill, likely Hunter, I don't know. But Hunter was a drug addict. Do you think that the American people would have voted Hunter Biden in? No. So why was it okay for him to run the country or run things at the White House, as Jake Tapper says? Why was it okay for him to run things at the White House when he wasn't elected to do that? And they concealed Joe Biden's condition. He concealed. I think that this is so fascinating. Okay, he comes out with this book, but I'm old enough to remember the Jake Tappers of the world. They were the ones who covered this all up. They were the ones who said, Joe Biden's sharp as a tack, that one. No. We all said, no, he's not. No, he's not. Jake Tapper is rewriting history. Jake Tapper was there trying to cover up Joe Biden's cognitive decline. He was right alongside the other mainstream media. And now all of a sudden he has this book deal and he's changed his position on everything. And he's a grifter. Okay. It's not popular anymore to be a Democrat, and he's a grifter trying to make money. Okay. So chapter 3 of the Original Sin details actually how the Biden family covered up Beau Biden's cancer, even getting a doctor to release clean bills of health in a letter, knowing Beau would not survive the brain cancer. This sounds pretty familiar. Don't know about you, but they have a history of covering up cancer. So this is an audio clip I want to get to. I guess the Biden advisors were amazed at how much the media was willing to participate in the Biden cover-up. I was amazed as well, I'm not going to lie. But here's the Biden advisors. They're saying, oh, media, you need to be more critical of us. We said all of this, but media, you went along with it. So now they're all pointing fingers at each other. And the press is still doing this now with the cancer stuff coming out. They're still not being critical of the former White House, of the Biden administration. They're still not being skeptical and asking the right questions and getting to the bottom of who was actually running the country. When did Joe Biden get cancer? They're not asking those questions. They're trying to say that it's a conspiracy theory, and it's a MAGA conspiracy theory to say that Joe Biden concealed his cancer from the American people and he wasn't actually president. They say that's a conspiracy theory. The mainstream media, they're still doing this. So we're going to share this. It's remarkable. Here we go.
You talked to acknowledge that the media, were they surprised by how complicit the media was?
It was interesting. I had one conversation with someone. This was after the election while we were reporting this book. This person said, listen, yes, we deserve blame for X, Y, Z. We were hiding him. This person also sort of got in my face and they said, listen, the media deserves some blame too. We were sort of amazed at some of the stuff we were able to spin
and get away with
on. They in some ways,
it's like the bank robber complaining that the safe wasn't locked or something.
They're just like, you guys should not have believed us so easily. And I thought that was a really interesting. But I also think that's true. I think the media, in a lot of ways, just was not skeptical enough and did not remember the lesson that they do it to different degrees, but every White House lies. I think. But
when you were reporting this, did people in his inner circle?
Okay, so that's a Biden advisor, and he talks about how, the Biden advisors were kind of shocked, and people within the administration were kind of shocked at how easy it was to convince the media that, Joe Biden's cognitive decline wasn't a thing. And that they have some blame in this as well. So we're going to be back here. Good morning. Hi. Trump voice. Donald Trump, I'm not really great at it, my throat hurts, but his Truth Social sums it up perfectly. Don't blame Joe Biden. Joe Biden was quite literally not well and incapable of doing anything because he was he was probably on lep run and had all kinds of side effects. So, yeah, while we keep Joe Biden in our thoughts and prayers, I do want to make this clear. Everything that this administration needs to be called into question. Who were the people who made the decisions behind pushing the Inflation Reduction Act, which wasn't really meant to reduce inflation and actually spiked inflation? Who was the individual who signed off on the Afghanistan withdrawal? All of it. I want to know, and the American people deserve to know. We're going to get to all of it here next. I do want to get to Bernie Sanders, Bernie Bros. So Bernie Bros, I think it was during the 2016 primary. Yeah, they were all called racist and every ism that you can think of because they wanted the Democratic establishment, the liberal elite, which is the Hillary Clintons. They wanted, that was their pick, right? The super PACs and the super delegates. They wanted Hillary Clinton. So the Bernie Bros were called racist and isms as well. And Bernie Sanders says, oh, yeah, they do that all the time. The Democratic elite, they just, lie and call people racist and isms because it pushes them out, or it pushes those people out, their opposition out. And they'll do it to Democrats who aren't actually racist or homophobic or whatever have you. All right, here we go. 7:27 a.m. It's Cities 92.9. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little about the Joe Biden family covering up Beau Biden's cancer. Yes, they have a history of hiding cancer from the American people. They did it with Beau Biden. They got doctors to release clean bills of health, although they knew that Beau was never going to survive brain cancer. And it's starting to sound very familiar, isn't it? So this part is key. Jake Tapper and the rest of the mainstream media, they covered up Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Now you've got the original sin, Jake Tapper's book, and he's talking about how, Joe Biden, they covered it up. The advisors covered up Joe Biden's cognitive decline. No, you covered up Joe Biden's cognitive decline as well. Take a listen to this clip. Here we go.
Did those that you talked to acknowledge that the media, were they surprised by how complicit the media was?
It was interesting. I had one conversation with someone. This was after the election while we were reporting this book. This person said, listen, yes, we deserve blame for X, Y, Z. We were hiding him. This person also sort of got on my face and they said, listen, the media deserves some blame too. Like, we were sort of amazed at some of the stuff we were able to spin
and get away with
on. They in some ways,
it's like the bank robber complaining that the safe wasn't locked or something.
They're just like, you guys should not have believed us so easily. And I thought that was like a really interesting, but I also think that's true. I think the media, in a lot of ways, just was not skeptical enough and did not remember the lesson that they do it to different degrees, but every White House lies. I think
when you were
so every White House lies, the media should have been skeptical. They should have asked the questions. How's Joe Biden's health? They should have looked into the clean bills of health that were issued. There were multiple of them. The media didn't do their job, and that point is key. Jake Tapper didn't do his job, and now he comes out with this book. I mean, thoughts and prayers to Joe Biden. Everything that the Biden administration has done, though, and did, has to be called into question. I'm talking Afghanistan deal. I'm talking the Inflation Reduction Act. That was actually never meant to reduce inflation, by the way. All of it. Everything that was done under the Biden administration has to be called into question, because even in chapter 3 of Jake Tapper's own book, they talk about, or not chapter 3, in Jake Tapper's book, they talk about Hunter Biden, the drug addict, running aspects of the White House. Did you elect Hunter Biden? No. Would you ever elect Hunter Biden? Absolutely not. He's not really a respectable human being. So I want to shift gears a little bit. We are going to be talking about Bernie Sanders here. Bernie Sanders, he was sitting down with Andrew Schultz. Okay, now he's been doing podcasts because that's how Donald Trump won the election. I'm not sure if Bernie's going to run as vice president with AOC. They went on this Fight the Oligarchy tour. That's pretty clear if you're campaigning outside of your district that you're looking for a higher office. Now, the Democratic establishment hates podcasts. They hate shows like this one because people are allowed to express their opinions, and they don't like that. And this is why Bernie Sanders is sitting down with Andrew Schultz. It's because he knows that it works, and the Democratic Party can't control this kind of content like they do on the CNNs and on the New York Times. The Democratic Party just can't control it. And believe me, people don't like the fact that they don't get to control Cities 92.9. Local government does not like that because they've got their fingers in all the other media. They don't like that we're not going to be mouthpieces and print the press releases as they're written. We'll be skeptical and we'll be adversaries of the media or of the government. So, for example, anybody who gets in the Democrat establishment's way, Democrat or Republican, if you're an opponent and they deem you as an opponent, they will call you ists, isms. They'll accuse you of homophobism and racism and all of that. Anybody who gets into their way. And the Bernie bros actually experienced this when Bernie ran against Hillary Clinton. And he's on a podcast here. I got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back because Bernie Sanders actually sits down and he says, yeah, the Democrat establishment, they lie about their opposition. They call them racist and homophobes because they want to shut them down. And this is how they do it. So we're going to get to that podcast that Bernie was on. It's the same podcast where he admitted out loud that Democrats are a threat to democracy. So we're going to be right back with that next on Conservative Cat. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'm going to get to Bernie Sanders here. Podcast appearance. The Democrat Party doesn't like this. They can't control podcasts and things like that. And they can't control what's said like they do on CNN, the New York Times. They won't ever get called out on their bull crap on those programs. For example, the Joe Biden thing. They were never called out. The Trump or the Joe Biden administration and Democrats were never called out. And anybody who opposes the Democrat establishment, they will resort to isms and homophobia-isms and all of that. So Akash Singh asked about Bernie bros and how they were labeled as sexist and racist during the Bernie Sanders Hillary campaign run. And you have to remember, the only reason why you wouldn't vote for a Democrat is because you're an ist and you suck, you're a homophobe, and you're not voting for Democrats only because you're racist and you're a sexist, and that's why you're not voting for Democrats. So I want to play this one here. We'll get to this when we come back for the radio friends. So Andrew Schultz, he drew the comparison here, and Bernie didn't really comment on the comparison thing so much, but there's a comparison here where Kamala Harris ran against Donald Trump, and the Democrat establishment, they called, people who were pro-Donald Trump, supporters of Donald Trump, isms, fascists, sexists, all of that. And Bernie, he said, yeah, that's all the Democrat establishment. They do that. And that's what the liberal elite does. So we're going to play this clip here in just a little bit. But I want you to know, I actually worked for NPR. I'm not a crazy right-wing conservative, or I wasn't. Now I am. But I wasn't. I really wasn't. And it was the slight opposition to the Democrat Party, and then they call you an ist and ism and all of that when you push back slightly. If you push back slightly, then you're deemed like a fascist, and that is not cool, and it's not politically for the Democrat Party a good idea. Democrats told you or told Bernie Sanders supporters that they were racist and homophobes. So it's like, yeah, I mean, MAGA is not hardcore conservative either. It's just simply make America great again. And I think it's so interesting when you have some of these leftists on, New York Times, CNN, mainstream media, they'll print these headlines daily and they'll be like, it's an anti-Trump headline and it, is a policy that traditionally goes against Republican policy. And they're like, where's the outrage on this? It goes against Republican policy. And for example, the Middle East and the Syrian sanctions, those being lifted, that traditionally goes against Republican policy and Republican foreign policy. It's because MAGA isn't hardcore conservative. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. The liberal elite in the media, they lie and they say that MAGA is hardcore conservative. Really, they're just pro-America, okay? It's not uber conservative, the MAGA movement. For example, you've got Maha within MAGA, which is RFK Jr. He's a Democrat. J.D. Vance didn't even really like Donald Trump in the beginning. J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio didn't even really like Donald Trump in the beginning. This is like a team made up of pretty much bitter Democrats. The Trump administration is literally just bitter Democrats who were told these were the coalition of MAGA is really just former Bernie bros, former Occupy Wall Street people, and former Democrats who were told by the Democrat Party that there's no place for them anymore. And you've got a lot of apolitical people within the MAGA movement as well. It's a coalition of people who really are upset with the media and the Democrat Party. That's literally it. Like, they're not hardcore conservatives. They're not Project 2025 taking us back centuries. Really, this is just former Bernie bros, former Occupy Wall Street people, former Democrats. I mean, Donald Trump is a former Democrat himself. So Bernie also went off in this podcast about identity politics, which was weird. But we're going to be right back. Smash that like button. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Did you wake up this morning and is your throat scratchy? Mine's a little scratchy this morning. It's like 40 degrees or something this morning, 49 degrees, and the high is going to be 58 today, and it's kind of rainy. It's yucky. We went from like 90 degrees to 40 degrees. My throat's all messed up. Text me, let me know. Are you a fan of this weather? 309-451-9299. Bernie Sanders. He's in this podcast, and I think there's a reason why Bernie Sanders is going and he's doing a lot of these podcasts now. He's probably looking for either a vice presidential ticket with AOC, or he's going to go for president again. I don't know, but he's doing a media tour. He was on the Fight the Oligarchy tour with AOC. Akash Singh, he asked about the Bernie Bros in this podcast. Now, the Bernie Bros, they were called racist, homophobes, sexists during this match between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And you have to remember, the only reason why you wouldn't vote for a Democrat to these people, to the Democrat establishment, is because you're a fascist or because you're a sexist or because you're a racist, not because they suck at life and they suck at policy, the Democrat Party. So Andrew Schultz, he drew this comparison on this podcast about how Kamala Harris ran against Donald Trump, and they did the same thing to the Bernie Bros that they did to the Trump supporters. They accuse them of all kinds of isms and ists. You're a fascist. You're a racist. Take a listen. Here we go.
We have a question we want to ask about what happened to you in 2016 with this Bernie Bros movement. Your followers have a racism problem, a misogyny problem. Do you think that's a super PAC thing behind that?
I was the Democratic establishment.
Oh, wow.
You know, it's kind of interesting. During this election, the podcast space, which the Democrats largely avoided, they feel had some influence in the election. And they started to label us the podcast bros and said that we were sexist and we were racist and bigoted. It's almost like it's the exact same strategy to get you out of there.
Yeah, that's what the liberal elite does. And then you get to what we call identity politics.
Yeah.
That you're black, you're wonderful, you're tremendous, you're gay, you're the greatest human being on earth. Say, what do you stand for?
Exactly.
You're gay, that's fine, who cares?
Yeah.
But what do you stand for?
We have a question.
A lot happened there just now. This was the same podcast where Bernie also said that Democrats are a threat to democracy as well. It wasn't the super PAC, he said. It was the Democrat establishment. They like to label people homophobes. They like to label them racists if you're an opponent of theirs. And I would have loved to hear a follow-up here in this podcast. Like, there's obviously a comparison to be made. Kamala Harris accused all the Trump supporters of being sexist, and that's the reason why they didn't vote for her. You know, and I find it interesting, the left, and a lot of my left friends, they'll, post headlines, anti-Trump headlines, and really what Trump is doing is, not a Republican policy. And where's the outrage? Where's the outrage? Trump just did this. Where's the outrage from the Republican Party? Yeah, well, for example, earlier in the show, I told you about the Farm Bill, the $300 billion in cuts. You're going to get some Republicans, maybe, and Eric Sorensen, he did this. He goes, where's the outrage? And, I hear from Republicans all of the time, veterans, but this $300 billion cut to SNAP is going to affect veterans. And how could you take the foods out of mouths of homeless veterans, right? And I hear this stuff from the left all the time. Really? Donald Trump isn't a Republican, by the way. He's not. He was a former Democrat, and a lot of what the MAGA movement is former Bernie bros, former Occupy Wall Street people, and former Democrats who were told by the Democrat Party that there's no place for them anymore. And there's a lot of apolitical men who are a part of the MAGA movement, have been traditionally apolitical, and they got tired of being called racist and sexist for simply opposing them in the slightest bit. Like, that's it. And, for example, Syrian sanctions, they've been lifted. Donald Trump's trying to make peace in the Middle East, and that's not a traditional Republican policy. And the left or the Democrat establishment is poking, and they're like, where's the outrage, Republicans? Where's the outrage? Well, you're not going to get outrage, because guess what? This MAGA movement is taking the country by storm. I think it's also interesting in this podcast, you hear Bernie Sanders talk about identity politics, which is odd because he literally was just on this Fight the Oligarchy tour with AOC, who is nothing but identity politics. He did this tour with his little sidekick, AOC, and she is infamous for accusing people of racism, homophobiaism, and whatever. Still, we hear Bernie admit out loud, it's almost like Bernie has no principles at all. Right? Because he says one thing, and then here's where I think the real Bernie Sanders is, right here in this podcast, because in a podcast format, you've got this authenticity and not these, stuffy reporters today at noon. You get the real person out of these podcasts. And I think that this is the real Bernie, but he's scared of the Democrat establishment, likely. That's not a leader. We shouldn't be electing this guy, obviously, because he bends the knee to the Democrat establishment. And I think it's interesting that we heard this about the identity politics from Bernie Sanders. All of everything he said is true. Like, what's your policy? What do you stand on? I don't care that you're black. I don't care that you're gay. What do you care about? How are you going to make the country better? I don't care. And it's fascinating to see Democrats like Bernie starting to work this podcast circuit. And they're admitting here that Democrats suck. Bernie Sanders is, I mean, he's called him a threat to democracy in this podcast. He also said that he's anti-identity politics, or took a jab at identity politics. Also said that the Democrat Party labels their opposition, lies about their opposition, calling them racists and homophobes and sexists or whatever. And it's a total lie, but they do that to shut them down. So he admits all of this. I think this is interesting. We're going to have to see what winds up happening in this space and who winds up emerging in this space. Bernie has done so. If there's other Democrats that emerge in this space, that's probably pretty clear sign that they're going to try their luck at a 2028. All right. I want to get to this story. This is bizarre. A man is alive today after a coyote jumped him solely because he had no choice but to choke this animal to death. Really bizarre story. James Pullman, he said that he was having a smoke outside his house and he felt like something was watching him. And then all of a sudden, this coyote jumped on me. I caught him in the air. He was biting me. When I threw him down and tried to slide out of the way, he kept coming after me and I had to choke him. And I held on to his throat. So that's going to be our story next. You won't want to miss, because this is an odd one. I've never really experienced that before, where animals will come up to you and jump you like that. I don't know if this animal is sick or what, but it's not out of the ordinary nowadays. I guess because this is becoming more and more common. And I'm not sure exactly why that is, and I don't think but where animals are starting to approach, maybe it could be deforestation, I don't know, but they're starting to approach humans and attack, which is really bizarre. So we're going to chat about that here next on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Hey, hit the like button and share this out with your friends. We are going to be getting to this coyote who really thought that he could make this man his lunch. James Pullman, he was outside his home having a smoke, and then all of a sudden this coyote jumps him. Earlier in the show, we talked a lot about Eric Sorensen. He was in a committee. They were doing $300 billion in cuts to food assistance programs. I don't even know why SNAP is in the, it really should be with the Department of Homeland Security, or Department of HHS, the Human Health Services. Okay, that's who should administer. And I don't know why it's in the House Agriculture Committee. It should be in some sort of Human Health Services Committee. Okay, something like that. I don't know why we're putting food assistance programs in the agriculture bill. It makes no sense, or the farm bill. So there's $300 billion cuts to SNAP. This Illinois Congressman Eric Sorensen, he was like, how could anyone vote against a bill that ensures veterans have food to eat? Brother, we're cutting the bureaucratic bloat here. So a lot of these programs, have Beckies who make $300,000 a year. State Representative David Freese, he told me that, hey, federal funding for veterans, that should be put towards mental health services. Not to say that this facility doesn't feed veterans, but I think that it's a distraction from what veterans really need. If they're homeless, if they're going without food, clearly they've got probably PTSD that prohibits them from re-entering society, contributing to society, having a job, all of that. And they've done or seen very extremely traumatic things, and we should be focused on providing them mental health services. And that's all done not in the Farm Bill, right? And we need to get the Farm Bill back to providing subsidies to farmers who actually plow the land, work the land, not these big ag businesses, by the way, because I think there's like $27 billion in subsidies to big ag, and a lot of these big ag corporations, they do food processing, which is just bad for our health in general. So they inject things like soy into everything, or corn syrup into everything. Corn, like it could be a bag of potato chips and it's got like corn in it. So it's like, wait a second, shouldn't it just be potato if they're potato chips? But it's got all kinds of corn in it. So yeah, not great. These big ag, one that comes to mind, ADM. ADM, they don't care about their employees. I've heard from several employees that say that it's a dangerous place to work. And I think that's pretty evident by the multiple fires, explosions, things that have gone on at all of these food processing plants across the country. And they like to present themselves as, oh, we're farmers, we're feeding America. Really, we could do without you. We don't need the soy injected into our food. We don't need the corn injected into our food, so that way you guys can make a ton of money. We don't need all of that. We just need to get back to the basics and have farmers feeding us real food and not processing the crap out of it with chemicals like hexane, which is a degreaser made for degreasing floors at fast food restaurants, right? Or like degreasing food, like heavy grease oil spills. Okay, so they're putting that all over your food and extracting the soy or the oils from vegetables. They secrete natural oils and they're extracting that with a chemical called hexane. And very dangerous stuff to be doing, by the way, not only for your health, but also just in general, fires, explosions, things like that. All right, let's go. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Cities 92.9. Before I took the break, I was telling you a little bit about this odd story. I like to pull these once in a while because they make my eyebrows just kind of whoop. It's not uncommon anymore, I guess, for coyotes to attack people. So I've heard stories about coyotes attacking pets. I actually found a rabbit all mauled up in my backyard, and I live like in a neighborhood, and I'm like, this is weird. So coyotes are a thing now. I don't know if it's because the Democrats, and this is happening in California, and it happens here in Illinois too, where I think the coyote, this happened in North Carolina, and they've gotten more blue over the years. North Carolina. In Illinois, we've got things like hunting season where you can't hunt coyotes and the population gets out of control. They've passed things where you can't have hunting contests anymore, which was a great way to keep some of these populations under control. The coyote population, the coon hunts, the raccoon hunts, that you can't have those anymore, contests. It's dumb. In Illinois, but I'd imagine North Carolina, it's gotten pretty blue over the years. They've probably implemented some restrictions on hunting. That's probably why we're starting to see more coyotes attack humans. And I guess that this happened. And what's really out of the ordinary when it comes to this is that this guy fought this coyote for 10 whole minutes. Take a listen to the report.
Even before this happened, some neighbors say they had been seeing and hearing coyotes off in the distance, some even afraid to go to the mailbox. But this was the first time that one of them came up close and personal with a coyote right here.
I'm right here. I'm looking this way, though.
For the first time since coming home from the hospital, James Pulliam showing us where it all went down.
By the time I turn right here, he probably right here, coming this way. So I'm like, oh, Lord.
He says he was standing in his usual smoke break spot when something fell off.
I felt something watching me the whole time anyway. It was like, I just felt like he was hunting me or something.
Moments later, out of the woods came a coyote.
And I kicked him when he jumped the first time. I'm like, oh. When I got right here, I tried to kick him again. I fell and crawled all the way back here. I picked up rocks, throwing it at him.
When James hit the ground, the coyote closed in.
He jumped on me and I caught him in the air. And he was like he was trying to bite. So when I threw him down, and I'm trying to slide out the way, but it wasn't no way. He just kept coming.
He tried yelling, but it didn't work. That's when he knew this was turning into a fight for his life.
Then I had to rip my left hand out of his mouth. And then when I got my left hand out, I just choked him, just all the way till the police got there.
He says even then, after 10 minutes, he wanted to make sure the coyote was dead so it couldn't attack anyone else in his neighborhood.
I was hoping ain't no more out there, because, ain't no telling when, or if it happened again, there might not be nobody around to help.
James went to the hospital for the injuries on his left hand. He's doing all right, but he needs to go back for more antibiotics.
All right. Well, that story is bizarre. And I don't know. I think that part of it is definitely maybe the hunting laws. I don't know the specifics of North Carolina, but there is this push just nationally by Democrats to get rid of hunting laws, hunting contests. And really, it's bad. It's bad because now you've got coyote population overpopulated. This was crazy. So he tripped and fell, kicked the coyote away. He said that he was fighting for his life. He grabbed the animal by the throat, held on for like 10 minutes. Now, this is pretty common in places like California, like I said, maybe even in Illinois. We've got issues with coyotes. I hear from people all of the time. But I've always heard them going after small animals like dogs, cats. I know quite a few people, actually. And it's kind of interesting over the years how many people tell you about, oh, a coyote attacked my dog. Whoa. It's pretty rare for them to go after large adults. This just means that there are way too many coyotes. They're all competing for resources. The coyote population, and now I don't know, maybe the coyote had rabies or something, and that's what the authorities said that they were testing James here, the guy that was attacked, for rabies. And he goes, I was afraid, don't get me wrong, but it's either me or him. And I choked out this coyote for 10 minutes. It was a pretty large coyote, too. And I don't know. I'm glad that he got this coyote down. He was actually dead because hopefully, or because now he can't go after anybody else, this coyote. And it is like, it's an animal, and I have respect for animals. But at the same time, it's like, you got to control the population. Otherwise, you're gonna see animals attack humans. That said, hopefully this guy James is not too traumatized from the whole ordeal, and I'm relieved to hear that he's okay, all things considered. All right, that's the end of the show. Appreciate you being here. As always, go to YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back at it tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. I'll catch you later.